Human rescues alien girl from jungle life. Her first shopping trip ever. The jungle was alive with strange sounds. Insects sang in high tones. Small animals rustled in the thick green leaves. Somewhere far away, a river roared like an endless beast. Jack moved slowly between tall trees. His boots pressed deep into the wet ground. The air was heavy, hot, and filled with a smell like wet earth and flowers. He was sweating, but his eyes stayed sharp. Jack was not here for adventure. He was here for a reason. 2 days ago, his spaceship scanner had picked up something unusual from this planet. A faint signal that did not match any known machine or life form. It was weak, almost gone, but it had a strange pattern, like it was calling out for help. Most explorers would ignore such a thing. It could be just a broken sensor. But Jack was not most explorers. He believed that if something was out here, alone, sending a signal, someone should answer. And so he came. The deeper he went into the jungle, the more he felt watched. Leaves moved without wind. Shadows shifted between tree trunks. He stopped often, listening. The sound of his own breathing seemed too loud. Then he heard it. A soft step. Not animal, not human. Something careful and close. Jack slowly turned his head between 2 trees. He saw her dot. At first, he thought it was a human girl. But no, her skin had a faint soft glow, as if light lived beneath it. Her hair was long and tangled, with leaves caught inside. Her eyes were huge, bright like moonlight, and fixed on him. She wore nothing, her body marked with faint lines like silver veins under the skin. She was thin but not weak. Her legs looked strong, built for running. She didn't move. She just stared. Jack's heart beat faster. He had seen many alien species, but never one like this. She looked young, maybe in her late teens, but there was something ageless about her eyes. He took a slow step forward. She took one back. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jack said softly. She tilted her head. Her lips moved, but the sound that came out was not a language he knew. A mix of soft clicks and smooth tones. She pointed at him, then at the jungle around them. Her expression was half curious, half wary. Jack lowered his weapon, letting it hang at his side. He opened his hands, showing they were empty. It was the universal way to stay safe. The girl's eyes narrowed, as if deciding whether to trust him. For a moment, it seemed she would run. But then she took a slow breath and stayed where she was. A loud crack sounded in the distance. The girl's head snapped toward it instantly. Her body tensed, ready to move. Jack turned, scanning the trees. The sound came again, branches breaking under heavy weight. The deep rumble of something big. Moving closer, the girl's glowing eyes widened. She looked at Jack and made a sharp motion with her hand, like telling him to follow. Then she moved fast, silent, slipping between the trees like water. Jack didn't know what was coming, but the fear in her eyes was real. He followed them, ran through thick vines and wet grass. Jack's boots sank in the mud, but she moved like she belonged here. Twice, he stumbled, and each time she stopped, looking back with impatience, but not leaving him behind. The sound of pursuit grew louder. Something was chasing them. Not just one thing. Jack could hear multiple heavy steps, snapping twigs and crushing leaves. Finally, they reached a small clearing. The girl stopped at the edge, scanning the area. Her breathing was fast, but her eyes kept moving. Alert. Jack opened his mouth to ask what was going on, and that's when he saw it. From the shadows of the jungle, 2 red eyes glowed, unblinking. They were far apart, set on a head much larger than any human's. The creature's outline was hard to see, but it was huge. Its breath, a slow, rumbling growl. Jack froze. The alien girl took a step closer to him, as if seeking his protection, or offering hers. Another pair of red eyes appeared, then another. They were surrounded. The girl reached for Jack's arm. Her grip was strong, her skin cool against his. She pulled him toward a narrow path between 2 rocks. Without speaking, without thinking, Jack let her lead him. The growls behind them grew louder. Whatever those things were, they weren't going to stop. Jack's thoughts raced. Who was this girl? Why was she alone out here? And why, in all the dangers of the galaxy, was she the one saving him right now? The narrow path between the rocks led them into a small hidden space. Thick vines hung from the stone walls, and the ground was covered in soft moss. It was darker here, and the noise of the hunters faded, though not completely. Jack leaned against a rock, breathing hard. The alien girl stood a few steps away, her eyes scanning the shadows like a wild animal ready to run again. She turned to look at him, her head tilted slightly, the same curious gesture she had made before. Her glowing skin lit the dim space just enough for him to see her face clearly. Jack spoke softly. "Thank you for saving me." She didn't respond with words he could understand. Instead, she stepped closer and studied him, her gaze moving from his boots to his hands, then to his face. Slowly, she reached out and touched the sleeve of his jacket. Her fingers were cold and light, as if she wasn't used to touching another person. She pulled back quickly, as though unsure if it was allowed. Jack smiled a little and tried to make his voice calm. "I'm Jack. Jack Walker." He pointed to himself when he said his name. She watched closely, then touched her own chest. A single sound came from her lips, soft, almost musical. "Leary, Leary," Jack repeated. The name felt strange, but pleasant. She seemed to approve, giving the smallest nod. From somewhere beyond the rocks, a distant growl reminded them both that danger was still near. Leary glanced toward the sound, her jaw tightening. Then she made quick gestures with her hands, pointing to the jungle, then to herself, then shaking her head. Jack frowned. "You can't go back." She nodded once. It was clear enough. Whatever lived out there was hunting her. And now, maybe, him too. Jack reached into his pack and pulled out a small water flask. He offered it to her. She looked at it like it was a strange tool from another world. Carefully, she took it, sniffed at the opening, then drank. Her eyes widened at the taste. It was just water, but perhaps she had never drunk it from anything like this before. When she handed it back, she said something in her own language, a word that might have meant thanks. A rustling sound came from above them. Jack tensed, hand going to his weapon, but Leary raised her hand to stop him. She made another sound, softer this time, and from the vines above, a small, glowing insect floated down. It landed on her shoulder, its wings shimmering like glass. Jack realized she was showing him something, maybe proof that she could live with the creatures here, or perhaps a sign of trust. But before he could ask, the insect suddenly shot away, vanishing into the dark. Leary's face turned serious again. She moved to the edge of the hiding spot and looked out, listening. Jack followed her gaze. Far away, between the trees, the red eyes were moving again, slowly, searching. "We can't stay here," Jack said. "We need to move before they find this place." Leary didn't seem to understand his words, but she understood his tone. She gave a sharp nod. Then she pointed to the direction opposite the hunters and started walking. Jack followed, careful not to make noise. The path they took was winding and hidden. At one point, they moved through a tunnel of twisted roots, the earth damp and cool. At another, they crossed a stream, the water glowing faintly under the moonlight filtering through the leaves. Finally, they stopped near a massive tree with roots like walls. Leary knelt and brushed away some leaves, revealing a small stone box. She opened it, and inside Jack saw a few items: a shell necklace, some dried fruit, and a piece of shiny metal shaped like a triangle. Leary picked up the metal and showed it to him. It had strange markings that glowed faintly. Jack realized, with a shock, that it was a piece of advanced technology, not from this jungle. "Where did you get this?" he whispered, though he knew she couldn't answer in his language. She pointed to the sky. Then her eyes softened, and she pointed to herself. Jack understood enough. She wasn't from here. She had come from somewhere beyond the stars, and something had forced her down to this wild, dangerous world. Before he could think more, a loud snap echoed from the trees. Both of them froze. The red eyes were back. This time, they were closer than ever. The glowing red eyes did not blink. They watched from the shadowed trees, low to the ground, moving slowly. Closing in, Jack's hand went to his blaster. His instincts told him to stand and fight, but his head told him this was not the place. Too many shadows. Too many places for them to strike first. Leary's breath had gone shallow. She stepped closer to him, not touching but staying near enough that he could feel her presence. Her glowing skin flickered faintly, like the light inside. Her was trembling. From deep within the jungle came a sound, a slow, rolling growl, followed by the thump of heavy steps. Another set of eyes appeared to the left, then another to the right. They were surrounded again, but now there was less distance between predator and prey. Jack whispered, "We run," quietly. He didn't know if she understood the words, but she nodded sharply. They moved fast, weaving between the tree roots, staying low. The ground was uneven and wet, and the air felt thick enough to choke on. Behind them, the hunters began to move too, their steps heavy but sure, breaking branches as they followed. One of the creatures let out a long, shrill call, not like an animal's cry, but a signal. Jack didn't know if it was calling more of its kind, or just telling the others where to strike. Either way, it made his stomach turn. Leary led the way. She seemed to know the jungle's hidden paths, where the vines would hold their weight, where the mud was thin enough to step without sinking. Jack followed her every move, trusting her instincts more than his own. They crossed a fallen tree that stretched over a shallow pit. Jack stepped lightly, his boots creaking on the damp wood. Leary moved ahead quickly, but just as Jack reached the middle, something slammed into the trunk. The force almost threw him off. A claw, long, black, and hooked, tore into the wood, just inches from his leg. Jack fired without thinking. The shot lit the darkness, and the creature hissed in pain, pulling back into the shadows. "Go!" he shouted. Leary grabbed his arm and yanked him forward. They ran again, this time faster. The jungle grew thicker, the air buzzing with unseen life. Jack's mind kept racing. What were those things? Why did they want her? But there was no time for answers. The growls came again, closer now. One of the creatures lunged from the side, its shape just a blur in the darkness. Leary ducked and rolled, coming up with a sharp piece of stone in her hand. She slashed at the creature's face, and it howled, retreating. Jack realized she was not helpless. Whatever life she had lived before, she had learned to fight to survive. They burst into a clearing. Above them, the sky was visible for the first time in hours, deep black, sprinkled with stars. Jack's ship was far from here. But seeing the sky gave him a small rush of hope. Then the ground shook out from the far side of the clearing. The largest of the hunters stepped forward. Its head was low, its red eyes locked on them. It was Isili, twice Jack's height, with a body built for power. Its claws dug into the dirt, and its mouth split open in a silent snarl. Jack raised his blaster. His hands were steady now. "Stay behind me," he told Leary. But Leary shook her head. She stepped beside him, holding her stone weapon like it was the only thing between her and death. The creature charged at Jack, fired again and again. Each shot hit, glowing briefly against its thick skin, but it didn't stop. Leary moved suddenly, darting to the side. She leaped onto a root, then onto the creature's back, slashing at its neck. The beast roared, twisting to throw her off. Jack took the chance. He aimed at its exposed throat and fired one last shot. This time, the creature stumbled, falling to one knee. Leary jumped free, landing beside Jack. The other hunters, seeing their leader fall, hesitated. Then, with low growls, they faded back into the trees. For a long moment, the jungle was quiet again. Jack lowered his weapon, breathing hard. He turned to Leary. She was standing still, her glowing skin steady now, her eyes watching him with something new, not just caution, but respect. "You saved my life," Jack said. She tilted her head, then pointed at him. "Both," she said in her own language, making a small gesture between them. Jack smiled faintly. "Yeah, both." They didn't stay in the clearing. Jack knew the hunters might return, and next time they might not be so lucky. Leary led him deeper into the jungle, towards someplace she clearly thought was safer. But as they moved, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the fight, about the strange metal she had shown him earlier, and about the way the creatures had focused on her, as if she was the only target they wanted. Whatever story she carried, it was dangerous, and now, it was his problem to dot asterisk. The jungle felt calmer now, but Jack didn't trust it. He and Leary moved in silence, the night air heavy with the scent of damp leaves. Every few minutes, Leary would stop and listen. Her glowing skin lit the ground faintly, casting soft light on the roots and stones under their feet. They reached a ridge, where the trees thinned, and from there, Leary led Jack down a narrow slope. At the bottom was a small valley, hidden on all sides by walls of rock. It looked almost peaceful, with a clear pool in the center reflecting the stars. Leary stopped at the edge of the pool and knelt, dipping her hands into the water. She drank, then motioned for Jack to do the same. Jack crouched and splashed his face before taking a drink. The water was cold and clean, and it helped wash away the taste of fear from his mouth. For the first time since meeting her, his breathing slowed. Leary sat back on her heels and watched him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes stayed fixed on his face, as if studying him the way one might study a strange animal. Jack broke the silence. "You've been here a long time, haven't you?" She didn't understand the words, but she tilted her head in a way that told him she sensed the meaning. He tapped the ground, then made a small motion with his hand, like counting days. Leary's eyes lowered. She nodded once, slowly. Something in her shoulders shifted, a heaviness that didn't belong to someone so young. Jack wondered how many nights she had spent running, how many days hiding from those hunters. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small emergency blanket, thin, metallic, able to keep in heat. He held it out to her. Leary touched the edge, cautiously, feeling the strange texture. Then she wrapped it around herself, the silver reflecting her faint glow. For a moment, she smiled. It was small, but it made her look different. Less like a hunted creature, more like someone who could belong in his world. Jack sat beside her, the quiet broken only by the gentle sound of water. His mind drifted to the metal triangle she had shown him earlier. It didn't belong to this jungle. It belonged to the kind of technology you only saw in space docks or deep space exploration ships. He looked at her. You came from up there, didn't you? He pointed to the stars. Leary followed his gesture. Her gaze softened, and she whispered something in her language, a word that sounded like longing. Then she tapped her chest twice and pointed upward again. Jack felt a twist in his chest. She was stranded here, alone. Before he could ask more, a soft chirp came from the far side of the valley. Leary tensed immediately. She stood, scanning the shadows. Jack rose too, weapon in hand. From behind a cluster of rocks, a small animal emerged. It was round and furry, with 4 bright eyes and short legs. It chirped again and waddled toward Leary. She relaxed instantly, crouching to meet it. The creature climbed onto her arm, like it had done so many times before. She whispered to it, stroking its fur. Jack lowered his weapon. "A friend of yours?" he asked with a faint smile. The animal turned its head toward Jack, made a curious trill, then went back to nuzzling Leary. She looked up at Jack, holding the creature close. For the first time, he saw something in her eyes that wasn't fear. It was trust. Still, Jack's thoughts returned to reality. "We can't stay here forever," he said under his breath. "They'll come looking." Leary might not have understood the words, but she seemed to understand the truth in his voice. She stood, placing the small creature gently on a rock. Then she walked to the far side of the pool and pointed up the rocky wall. Jack followed her. Gaze, there was a narrow opening at the top, almost hidden by hanging vines. From there, the faint glow of moonlight spilled into the valley. She gestured for him to follow. The climb was slow, the rock damp and slippery. At one point, Jack's foot slipped, but Leary grabbed his wrist and held him steady. Despite her smaller size, her grip was strong. At the top, they emerged into a higher part of the jungle. The trees here were thinner, the air cooler. Jack could see the stars more clearly, and in the distance, the faint outline of the mountain range that hid his camp. They walked a short distance to a fallen log, where they sat to rest again. Leary pulled the blanket tighter around her and glanced at him. Her voice was quiet, but she said his name for the first time. "Jack." He looked at her, surprised. "Yeah." She didn't say anything else, but the way she said his name carried weight, as if she was deciding, right there, that she could trust him. Jack didn't know what the next day would bring. But one thing was certain. He wasn't leaving her here. The jungle faded behind them as the shuttle broke through the clouds. Leary sat in the seat beside Jack, her hands gripping the edges like the world might tip over at any moment. Through the shuttle's clear dome, she could see the sky turning. From deep blue to the endless black of space. Her eyes widened. Stars stretched in every direction, brighter than she had ever seen from the jungle floor. A huge silver station floated in the distance, its rings turning slowly, lights shining, like a city in the night. Jack glanced at her. "That's the hub. Biggest trade station in this sector." Leary didn't understand the words, but she understood his tone. Pride, and maybe a little excitement. The shuttle docked with a soft hiss. As the doors opened, a wave of warm, dry air rushed in, smelling faintly of metal and spice. Leary followed Jack out. The moment they stepped into the main hall, she froze. People, hundreds of them. Humans and aliens of every shape. Tall, short, scaled, furred, walking in every direction. Lights flashed from signs overhead. Voices echoed from shops and stalls. The air full of movement and noise. Leary's eyes darted from face to face. She stepped closer to Jack without thinking, her fingers brushing his arm like she was afraid to lose him in the crowd. "It's all right," he said softly. "Just stay close." They moved through the station's central walkway. Vendors called out, trying to sell everything from glowing fruit to tiny robotic pets. A group of children ran past, laughing. A tall alien with a long neck carried a stack of crates over its shoulder. Leary slowed every few steps, staring at something new. She reached out to touch a floating sphere of water in one shop's display, only to laugh when it split into smaller orbs that drifted away. Jack smiled. "You've never seen a market before, have you? She tilted her head at his words, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. Finally, they reached a clothing store. The glass front shimmered with moving images, models spinning slowly to show off jackets, dresses, and boots. Inside, the air was cool, and the scent of fresh fabric filled the space. Leary stepped inside and stopped again. Racks of clothing stretched in every direction. Colors she had never imagined. Bright reds, soft blues, shimmering silvers hung neatly in lines. She walked slowly between them, her fingers brushing each fabric, feeling the textures. The shopkeeper, a friendly woman with sharp eyes, looked at Jack. Is this her first time? Jack nodded. Yeah, she's from far away. The woman smiled warmly at Leary. Well, then we'll make it special. She guided Leary toward a section of soft dresses. Leary held one up. Light green, flowing, smooth to the touch. She looked at Jack with a questioning expression. Jack chuckled. Try it. He mimed putting it on. A short time later, Leary stepped out of the changing booth wearing the dress. It fit her perfectly, the color making her faint glow look even brighter. She spun once, the skirt moving like water. Jack couldn't help but smile. Beautiful. Leary didn't understand the word, but she understood his face. She gave a small, shy smile back. The shopkeeper brought her a pair of soft boots and a light jacket. Leary tried them on, moving her feet as if testing the weight. She seemed almost surprised that the boots didn't slow her down. Jack paid for the clothes and thanked the shopkeeper. They stepped back into the station's main hall. Leary walked taller now, her eyes meeting those of the people they passed. The stares she got were no longer because she was strange or wild. They were because she looked like she belonged. But Jack didn't miss the way she still glanced over her shoulder from time to time. The memory of the jungle hunters was not gone. They stopped at a food stall. Jack ordered something simple, warm bread with a spiced filling. He handed one to Leary. She sniffed it, then took a careful bite. Her eyes widened, and she ate the rest quickly. Jack laughed. Guess you like it. Before she could reply, a deep, sharp sound cut through the noise of the market. An alarm. Red lights began to flash along the walls. Jack's smile vanished. That's not good. Leary's hand went to his sleeve, gripping tightly. She scanned the crowd, her glow flickering faintly. Over the loudspeaker, a voice spoke in standard. Security alert. Possible hostile entry in Section 3. All civilians. Remain in place. Jack's stomach tightened. Section 3 wasn't far. Through the shifting crowd, he caught sight of movement. Large shapes, pushing against the flow of people. They were moving with purpose. Leary saw them too. Her grip on Jack's arm tightened. The hunters had followed them here. The crowd in the market shifted like a living wave, people moving away from the flashing red lights. Jack pulled Leary to the side, pressing against a wall. Her glowing skin pulsed faintly, the light inside her flickering like it did in the jungle when danger was near. Stay with me, Jack said, scanning the moving faces. Through the crowd, the hunters appeared. Not as shadows this time. Out in the open, they were taller than most humans, their bodies wrapped in dark armor that seemed to grow from their skin. Each step was heavy, their clawed feet clinking against the station floor. Their eyes, that same burning red from the jungle, locked on Leary instantly. Jack. Leary whispered his name, her voice trembling. One of the hunters let out a low growl, deep enough to make the floor hum. People screamed and ran in the opposite direction. The hunters didn't care about anyone else. Their focus was only on her. Jack grabbed her hand. Move. They ran, weaving through the scattering crowd. Stalls tipped over as they passed, crates spilling glowing fruit, small drones zipping out of the way. Vendors shouted in panic. The hunters followed, moving faster than Jack expected. Even with the crowd slowing them down, they were gaining ground. A blast of energy hit the wall just beside Jack's head. He ducked instinctively, pulling Leary with him. The air smelled like burnt metal. They're armed. Jack realized aloud. This wasn't going to be a chase. It was going to be a fight. They turned down a narrow side hall. Jack had been on the hub enough times to know where it led. Toward the lower service levels. Fewer people, more hiding places. And maybe, if they were lucky, a path to the docking bays. Leary stumbled once, her new boots slipping on the smooth floor, but Jack caught her before she fell. He kept her moving. The side hall opened into a long maintenance corridor, lined with pipes. The hum of the station's power systems echoed around them. Jack stopped for half a second. Pulling a small device from his belt, a flash charge, he slapped it onto the wall, primed it, and kept running. The first hunter turned the corner, just as the charge went off. A burst of white light filled the corridor, followed by a shockwave of sound. The hunter staggered back, roaring in pain, but the others were still coming. Leary looked back and made a sharp motion with her hand, a gesture Jack recognized from the jungle. She was telling him to follow her lead. She darted down a side ventway, small enough that the hunters would have to slow to fit inside. Jack followed, crouching low, the heat from the nearby pipes making sweat drip down his neck. The tunnel twisted and dropped sharply, ending in a grated floor that overlooked the cargo bay. Below, workers in exosuits were loading crates onto small haulers. Jack spotted what he needed: a delivery skimmer parked near the far wall. Fast, unarmed, but enough to get them to his ship. "We get down there," Jack whispered. Leary nodded, then pointed to the vents locking bolts. Together, they pushed the grate free. It fell with a metallic clang, drawing a few surprised looks from the workers. Jack dropped down first, then helped Leary land quietly. "Hey," one of the workers shouted, starting toward them. Jack didn't have time to explain. "Emergency," he called. "Station alert. Hunters in the upper levels." That was enough. The workers backed away quickly, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever was happening. Jack and Leary sprinted for the skimmer. He jumped into the pilot's seat, hands moving fast over the controls. The engine hummed to life. Then, the sound of metal hitting metal made him turn. The hunters had arrived. They dropped from the upper vent like predators leaping onto prey, their claws screeching against the cargo bay floor. One of them lunged for Leary. Jack didn't think he fired his blaster, hitting the hunter in the shoulder. It stumbled, but didn't fall. "Get in," Jack yelled. Leary jumped into the seat beside him, just as another blast from the hunters struck the wall. She'd been standing. Jack slammed the controls forward. The skimmer shot ahead, gliding low over the floor and weaving between stacks of crates. The hunters didn't stop. They ran after the skimmer, their speed almost keeping up with the vehicle. Jack swerved hard, avoiding another energy blast. Sparks flew as one shot clipped the edge of the skimmer's rear panel. "They're not giving up," Jack muttered through clenched teeth. The docking bay doors came into sight ahead, but they were still closed. Jack's mind raced. "Hold on," he said. He pushed the skimmer harder, aiming for the small service hatch beside the main doors. At the last second, he hit the manual override. The hatch slid open just enough for them to slip through. Behind them, the hunters reached the door, but it slammed shut before they could follow. For now, they were safe. But Jack knew it wouldn't last. He looked at Leary. She was breathing hard, her eyes wide, her glow dimmed from fear and exhaustion. "They won't stop," he said quietly. Leary's voice was soft but certain. "Then, we stop them." The service tunnel shook with the hum of the skimmer's engine as Jack pushed it to its limit. Cold air rushed past them, carrying the metallic scent of the docking bay. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a smaller hangar, empty except for his ship. The Starfinder waited like a loyal dog, its silver hull reflecting the dim overhead lights. Jack's chest loosened a little at the sight, but only a little. The hunters wouldn't be far behind. "Go, go," he urged as they jumped out of the skimmer. Leary's boots hit the deck, her glow faint but steady. They ran for the ship's ramp. Jack's boots pounded against the metal floor. He was halfway up when the first sound hit the deep, echoing roar of the hunters. They had found the tunnel. Inside, Jack shouted. Leary sprinted past him into the ship. He slapped the ramp controls and the heavy metal began to rise. Too slow. One of the hunters appeared in the tunnel mouth, its red eyes locking on them. It charged, claws scraping sparks from the floor. Jack raised his blaster, firing 3 times in quick bursts. The shots slowed it, but didn't stop it. The ramp was still closing when the hunter leapt. Leary moved without hesitation. She grabbed the control lever beside the ramp and slammed it upward, reversing the hydraulics. The ramp jerked down again, slamming into the hunter's legs mid-jump. The beast crashed to the floor with a roar of pain. Jack fired again, this time at point-blank range. The creature collapsed, unmoving. But more were coming. Jack sprinted to the cockpit, Leary right behind him. He dropped into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. The Starfinder's engines roared to life. Through the hangar doors, he could see them, 3 more hunters charging across the deck. The station's automated defenses kicked in, heavy blasters dropping from the ceiling and firing. But the hunters dodged most of the shots. "They'll be on us before we clear the bay," Jack muttered. Leary touched his arm. Her voice was soft, but certain. "We fight now." Jack met her gaze. There was no fear in her eyes now, Only resolve. He nodded once. All right. They moved together. Jack grabbed a pulse grenade from the weapons locker and tossed her a small shock baton. She caught it easily, spinning it in her hand like she'd used one before. The first hunter reached the ramp just as they met it. Jack threw the grenade. The blast lit the hangar in a white flash, sending the beast tumbling back. The second came from the side, climbing the ship's landing strut. Leary met it halfway, jabbing the baton into its chest. The creature howled, electricity crackling across its body before it fell. The third leaped from above, aiming for Jack. He rolled to the side, feeling the rush of air as claws missed him by inches. He fired upward, hitting the creature in the jaw. It staggered, and Leary finished it with a sharp strike to the head. The hangar fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Jack jumped back into the cockpit. Hold on, he called. The Starfinder lifted from the deck, the landing gear folding in. The hangar doors opened, revealing the black ocean of space beyond. Jack punched the throttle, and the ship shot forward, leaving the hub behind. But even as the stars stretched into lines, Jack's eyes stayed on the sensors. No more hunter signals followed. For now, they were truly clear. In the quiet that followed, Leary came to stand beside him. She looked out at the stars, her glow warmer now. Jack broke the silence. They won't stop looking for you, you know. Leary turned her eyes to him. Then, you stop them. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. That's a very human answer. She tilted her head at the word, like she was testing it in her mind. Then she smiled, a real, open smile that lit her face. Jack leaned back in his chair. All right, Leary. We'll make sure they never find you again. And maybe, along the way, we find where you belong. Her gaze shifted back to the stars. With you, she said simply. Jack's throat tightened a little, but he didn't reply. He didn't need to. The Starfinder flew on into the endless dark, two figures side by side, one human, one alien, both carrying the scars of a jungle and the fire of survival. Somewhere out there, the hunters would try again. But Jack knew something they didn't. Humans didn't give up. And when a human decided to protect someone, the whole galaxy would have to go through him first.